In this video, we're going to go over how to use a formula to find the slope. Instead of them giving you a graph of a line and you figuring out by counting blocks what the slope is, they're going to give you the coordinates of 2 points. You're going to use those coordinates and you're going to figure out what the slope is. This formula is really easy. So to figure out the slope, what you're going to do is, as usual, the slope is a fraction. Usually you count up and down first. So when you're counting up and down, that's the y's. You're going to take those y's of those 2 points and you're going to subtract them and put it in the top of the fraction. Then you're going to take your x's from your 2 points. You're going to subtract those and you're going to put it in the bottom. Now, remember, a point consists of an x and a y, and when they give you 2 of them, you have 2 x's and 2 y's. You're going to take those y's and you're going to subtract them, put it in the top. You're going to take your x's, subtract them, put it in the bottom. Just that easy. So let's look at our first example. In our first example, we're going to take these 2 points and we're going to use the slope formula. Remember, the slope, how do you figure out the slope? You take your y's, you subtract them, put it in the top. X's, subtract them, put them in the bottom. Now this negative sign means the opposite of these second numbers. You're just going to take your first y, you're going to put it in here. You're going to take your second y, you're going to write down the opposite. You're going to take your first x, you're going to put it right there, and then you're going to write down the opposite of your second x. This negative sign tells you to write down the opposite of what they're giving you up there. So, remember, this is my x and this is my y. My first y is 2. And then the opposite of positive 1, negative 1. My first x is 4. The opposite of my next x is negative 2. Do the math in the top. 2 minus 1 is 1. 4 minus 2 is 2. The slope of the line that goes through these 2 points is 1/2. If I graphed these and counted the blocks, I would go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. Let's try another example. I'm going to find the slope of the line that goes through these 2 points. When you find the slope, you take your y's, you put them in the top, x's go in the bottom. You subtract your y's and you subtract your x's. Looking at my first y is 2. Put that in the top of the fraction. Notice there are negative signs over here. So what I'm going to do is, since this is a negative sign, a negative and a negative make a positive. So this is my first y. The opposite of my next y, positive 1. My first x is 4. The opposite of my next x, positive 2. The opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. Add these in the top. I get 3. Add them in the bottom. I get 6. Remember, all fractions must be reduced. 3 will go into both of these numbers. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. The slope of the line that goes through these 2 points is 1/2. If I graph these on a graph and then started counting, I would go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. Example number 3. I'm going to find the slope of the line that goes through these 2 points. Again, how do I find the slope? Using this formula. This formula tells me to take the y's and subtract them, put it in the top. X's, subtract them, put it in the bottom. What is my first y? My first y is negative 3. What's the opposite of my second y? Negative 1. My first x is 4. The opposite of my next x, positive 2. Negative 3 minus 1, negative 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. Again, I need to reduce this. 2 will go into both of those numbers. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. The slope of the line that goes through these 2 points is negative 2/3. I need to find the slope that goes through these 2 points. Again, if you write it this way over and over and over again, pretty soon you just memorize the formula and you won't have to think about what to do when they give you 2 points. You take your y's, subtract it, put it in the top of the fraction. Take your x's, subtract them, put it in the bottom of the fraction. What is my first y? 0. What is the opposite of my next y? Negative 5. What's the opposite of positive 5? Negative 5. My first x is negative 2. What's the opposite of positive 1? Negative 1. 0 minus 5, negative 5. Negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. Remember, this is a division bar, so what you're doing is you're dividing. You can't have 2 negative signs here because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Another thing, never write the slope as a mixed number. It's okay for it to be an improper fraction. It's okay for the top number to be bigger than the bottom number. Just leave it like that because this is a set of instructions for finding points on the line. This set of instructions tells me to go up 5 over 3, up 5 over 3. For this slope, it was go down 2, forward 3, down 2, forward 3. Example number 5. I need to find the slope of the line that goes through these 2 points. Again, to find the slope, you take your y's, subtract them, put it in the top of the fraction. Take your x's, subtract them, put them in the bottom of the fraction. My first y is 4, and the opposite of my next y, positive 3. What's the opposite of negative 3? Positive 3. My first x, negative 3. The opposite of my next x, what's the opposite of positive 2? Negative 2. Add these numbers in the top, I get 7. Combine these together right here, negative 3 and negative 2 is negative 5. It doesn't matter whether the negative signs are in the top and the bottom. When you write your answer, you kind of put it there in the middle. Negative 7/5. To use this slope, I would go down 7, forward 5, which is the exact same thing as going up 7 and back 5. Example number 6. Remember to find the slope, and that's what we're doing, finding the slope of the line that goes through these 2 points. I take my y's, subtract them, put it in the top. Take my x's, subtract them, put it in the bottom. My first y, negative 1. The opposite of my next y. What's the opposite of negative 1? Positive 1. My first x, negative 3. The opposite of my next x, negative 2. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. 0 divided by negative 5 is 0. The slope of the line that passes through these 2 points is 0. And we need to remember what a slope of 0 looks like. A slope of 0 is a horizontal line like that. That's what a slope of 0. It's not positive and it's not negative. So remember, if the 0 is in the top of the fraction, your answer's 0. We're going to find the slope of the line that goes through these 2 points. Remember, to find the slope, you take your y's, subtract them, put it in the top. Take your x's, subtract them, put them in the bottom. My first y is 4. The opposite of my next y is positive 3. The opposite of negative 3 is positive 3. My first x, negative 2. The opposite of my next x, positive 2. 4 plus 3 is 7. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. You cannot divide by 0. Since you cannot divide by 0, then you write no slope. We need to remember what a slope that's no slope or undefined looks like? It's a vertical line, a line that goes straight up and down. So if the 0 is in the top, your answer is 0. If your 0 is in the bottom of the fraction, your answer is no slope or undefined. Example number 8. I need to find the slope of the line that goes through these 2 points. To find the slope, I subtract my y's, put it in the top of a fraction, subtract my x's, put it in the bottom of the fraction. My first y, -4. The opposite of my next y, -10. My first x, -6. The opposite of my next x, -1. -4 minus 10, -14. -6 minus 1 is -7. When you can actually divide these numbers, then you write down a whole number. -14 divided by -7 is +2. Example number 9. To find the slope, you take your y's, subtract them, put it in the top of the fraction. Take your x's, subtract it, put it in the bottom of the fraction. My first y is -4. The opposite of my next y, +3. My first x is 0. The opposite of my next x, -7. -4 plus 3, -1. 0 minus 7, -7. Again, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. This is +1/7. That's the slope that goes through those 2 lines. And our last example, example number 10. Again, this takes practice. If you practice this enough, then you can remember what the formula is and you don't have to memorize the formula. It's just a set of instructions telling you what to do. The set of instructions tells you to take the y's and subtract them. Take your first y. Subtract your second y. Take your first x. Subtract your second x. A negative and a negative make a positive. 7 minus 18, -11. -1 plus 3 is 2. That's the slope of the line that passes through those 2 points.